right, everybody, welcome back. I am joined by Kyle Rogers, who, if you don't know him, well, you should. He's a firearms instructor, self-defense instructor, an Army veteran, and he's here to talk to us about so many wonderful different things. So, Kyle, thank you so much for joining us today.
Yeah, thank you for having me on. I appreciate it. We're going to have some fun today.
Oh, I'm super excited. Let's dive right in head first. So, as a self-defense expert with a background in Army combatives, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, Krav Maga, and so many more, obviously, of course, firearms, can you tell us a little bit more specifically about your philosophy and mindset about training in training for real-world violence?
Yeah, certainly. So I think one of the most important parts is to train to where the statistics and the science and all the data go to, right? If so, I have this conversation all the time with new students, with people I meet in the gun shops or gun shows or wherever. I always ask them, "Hey, how often do you go out to the range?" And you get a wide variety of answer, which is fine. But my next question to them is, and how often, whenever you're out at the range, are you at full presentation? And their answer is always, always. I'm at full presentation. I never shoot in any other shooting position ever. And so I'll throw out the data to them. Hey, well, did you know that 65 to 75% of all shootings happen within a distance of 0 to 6 feet? And so what I'll do is I'll move myself to 6 feet away from them, and I'll say this. I was like, if you have your gun at full presentation with someone here, because you're trained that way, you're training that mind-body connection to go to full presentation all the time. Yeah. If that happens and you are at full presentation, how easy do you think it is for someone to move that gun offline or take the gun away from you? And just that little bit of nugget, just that tiny little bit of information has actually convinced quite a few people to train a way, or to change the way that they're training, actually. And so I say all that to say this: training for real world violence is hard. There are many places that you can go to get training, but how many of those instructors are actually teaching towards this data? The answer is probably not very many. They're working within some sort of normalcy bias, which is fine. They probably have not either thought about actual real world violence before, or maybe they're just colorblind to it. I don't know. But you are able to get that training out there, and you have to ask your instructors, okay, on this specific technique or in this series of techniques, what if this person has a screwdriver, or what if they have a hammer or a knife or a gun? Like, what do you think I should do at that time? And if they can't answer you, go find the answer somewhere else. I'm not saying that completely abandon your gym at all. That's not what I'm saying. But your self-defense instructor, your firearms instructor, whoever it is, should be able to walk you through the safest way possible to successfully defend your life and the lives of others.
Absolutely. And I think there's a lot to be said, too, as far as training versus practice. When you go out on a range and you're at full presentation, you're simply practicing. That's not training. So please don't equate or confuse the two. There's a big difference. And just like you said earlier, I think sometimes we get instructors who get comfortable teaching one thing, and before you know it, it's 2, 3, 4, 5 years down the road, they've been teaching the same thing. I can say in my area, really often I run into instructors who are in their late 40s and 50s, and their only experience for teaching firearms was when they were in the Army, when they were 20. And that's the extent of their education. They've never furthered their education. So they're teaching people something that is significantly outdated, something they actually haven't practically used or educated themselves any further. So I think those are all huge points to hit on.
Yeah, you nailed it right on the head for sure. So one of the primary things that I'm kind of teaching people about now, or kind of spreading awareness, is their past training experiences. If someone, like I've talked to many people who had taken Taekwondo or karate as a kid, keep in mind, I am all for that. It teaches the kids so many great things. But they also have to know that just because that they achieved a black belt at 12 years old does not mean that they're ready for everything that a black belt in jiu-jitsu or Krav is ready for. Just because the training experiences are contextual, right? And same thing with the Army. Like, I was in the Army for 6 years. I did a lot of CQB training and so many other stuff. It was a good time. It was really, really awesome training that I would put up against anybody in the world, or any other military force in the world, that is. But you also have to understand that training specifically is contextual. We did 0 solo CQB, and as a normal citizen now, that's all I'm going to do. More than likely, I'm not going to have a team behind me. I'm not going to have air support. I'm not going to have all this other fancy stuff. That's not the world that we live in right now. So if you're relying on your past contextual experiences for training, then I would say you need to check yourself. You need to do some bit of self-reflection and create that self-awareness of where you're actually at.
Yeah, absolutely. And I can guarantee your philosophy is very similar to mine, right? As an instructor, you're similar, you're just permanently a student because you're constantly seeking out the next bit of information, the better way to teach your students, and you're picking apart these different scenarios and the things you give your students, right? Does this work? How does that work? And you're constantly pressure testing. And if you've got an instructor who is not doing any of that,
you're wasting your money.
Something to consider. Let's just put it that way.
Yeah.
As an instructor that we share would say, something for your consideration.
Exactly. Yeah. 100%. That's right.
So tell me, can you speak to some of the biggest misconceptions you've seen, both as a firearms instructor and as a combatives instructor?
Yeah. So on the firearm side, there is a huge machismo that people get when they carry a firearm. I mean, it is a powerful tool at your disposal. The misconception is if you carry a gun, then you're ready for everything. That's not entirely correct at all. If someone just starts waylaying on you with that, just a surprise like ambush attack, how quickly can you really get to your gun and defend your life? Like that's not too practical. You have to integrate those hands-on experiences with the firearm. That's the reason why we train the way that we do. And the same thing on the combative side. I've trained combatives before where, like I keep in mind, I love Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. I think it is the best ground fighting platform in the world. I really do. But the thing is BJJ. There's a lot of techniques that I'm never ever going to do, outside the gym. It's just not. I'm not pulling a daily card. I'm trying to get off the ground as soon as possible, and I'm also trying to conceal and retain my weapon. That's the top two, things I have to worry about. So, I think if in both categories, firearms training and combatives, I think that you have to have the healthy respect of each other. If you're a firearms instructor or if you're taking firearms classes, you have to realize that, in that class, more than likely you are drawing and you're shooting in every single scenario. So if you're a firearms instructor, you have to add in no shoots as well, right? So very, very quick, something that you can do, and this goes for instructors or for students, face away from your instructor. And whenever he tells you to turn around via, I use standby fight, right? So whenever I say standby fight, I'll have my students turn around and they'll have to assess what I'm doing. And a very easy way for that is to take it down to the most simple level, a binary level. So what I'll do is I'll say, if I'm holding up an even number of fingers, don't shoot. If I'm holding up an odd number of fingers, shoot. So they'll have to turn around, look for me, because I'll move around in the gym. They won't know where I'm at most of the time. And then they'll have to look at my fingers on both hands, and they're moving around. So, that's a really good way for firearms people to start that scenario-based training. It's at a very, very binary level. And like we said earlier, if you're in a combatives class and you are worried about a real-world scenario, then ask your instructor what they would do in this situation if there are more than one attacker, because like 60% of the time there's more than one attacker in a self-defense environment, that is. So just ask those questions. Don't be afraid to ask and see what your instructors say.
Absolutely. So as a father of 4 girls, what types of conversations, Best of luck to you, bud. Like, I
Thank
got
you.
one, but you've got four. Oh,
I
it's
do.
rough.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Please
what,
send prayers my way.
what type of conversations are you starting to have with them? I mean, because I know they're in different ages, obviously, but what types of conversations are you starting to have, or have you had with them in preparation, kind of just knowing what it realistically looks like for young women in this world?
Certainly. So something that I'm obviously really passionate about is women's self-defense. You know, just based on the way that women, or men and women, are built, women are typically at a disadvantage in a self-defense environment. Which, as a as a father of four girls, I mean, that's a real concern. You know, I have to make sure that they are as prepared as they can be, and it all starts when they're young. And so my oldest just turned 11 years old, and you know, my oldest three, 11, 9, and 5, they're all three of those girls are going to BJJ and Muay Thai. And so in those classes, you know, the instructors are really good at teaching those kids. And they'll go over a little bit of, you know, hey, if you're at school and you got some kid trying to pin you down and being mean to you, here's a good technique to get them off of you, and that kind of stuff. So like whenever I have those conversations with them, obviously there's a certain age that it's appropriate to. I'm not going to go to my 3-year-old and be like, hey, if you ever have someone pin you down, punching you in the face, then here's what you need to do. Right.
Yeah.
But with my 11, with my 9-year-old, I can have that conversation. And so what we tell them is, you know, for one, obviously only trying to find the right words now. I feel like I've had the conversation so many times. I should have it down, you know. But you know, just making sure that your children are not with people that you don't trust. And I know that a lot of domestic violence happens with people that you do know. But I mean, you have to do the best you can. It's not easy, right?
It's not easy.
Yeah. So making sure that the kids are around people they trust, getting them some sort of awareness, making sure that they realize that bad people are out there. And my girls listen to me talk to my students all the time, so they have a really good idea of the type of evil that exists, and what it takes for people to survive and to win against those violent encounters.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, my daughter's 5, and we started when she was real young, starting to play games like I Spy, right? So she starts really, really incorporating that situational awareness and starting to look around. I purposely, because she's cute, she's 5. What kid isn't cute at 5 years old? When we
Yeah.
go out to grocery stores, obviously not right now, but when we did, if somebody, I always use the example, there was one guy in particular who was wearing a t-shirt, an ugly tie-dye t-shirt with a giant happy face on it. He made me nervous. And instead, what I just did for him to recognize that I saw him, and it was like, hey, look at that guy's great happy face shirt. My daughter's like, yay, that's so much fun. And anytime she would see that guy in the store, guess what the first thing she would do is point out the happy face t-shirt, right? And it gave him some awareness, like, we see you, pal. Like, you're being a
Yeah.
creep. We see you, right? We're identifying you verbally and loudly, right? But when I was buckling her into her seatbelt, guess what she was looking at? Oh, she's looking over my shoulder, looking for people, right? And things that she can identify. And so we start playing little games like that. But we've got big plans for when she's a little bit older, starting to talk about, the way that some of these people will groom children and that kind of stuff. And it's a tender topic, but especially when you're talking about young girls, it's like you said, getting them into some type of training to develop their confidence and their skill set is so huge, but also building into that psychological aspect too, because so many times we glance over that grooming, which is such a huge proponent. And so I think incorporating that, if you've got little kids, it doesn't matter, girls or boys, having those conversations when you deem as age appropriate for them, because each kid is a little bit different. Even now we're even having conversations about how we don't keep secrets. Secrets don't make friends. Secrets aren't good, that kind of stuff.
Yep.
But especially when you have kids, those are conversations that we have to think. And when we can't pretend, oh, that kind of stuff will never happen, because if you pretend it, just like when the firearms world or the self-defense world, if you just continue to do what we call ostrich syndrome, head in the sand, ass in the air, right? It doesn't make you any better. Ignoring those things doesn't make you any better. Being prepared and not in fear is the way to go. So make sure those of you at home listening, right, think about those things and really cover those if you have kids. Let me ask you another question. As an instructor who promotes additional training after getting your concealed carry, right, which is so important, can you give us maybe 3 things to look for when trying to find additional classes after your initial concealed carry?
Yeah, certainly. So one of the things that I would tell people to look for is to make sure that the place that you're going is reputable. Okay, go on Google, go on their Facebook page, look at the reviews, see what people are saying about them. Go in and ask questions to these guys or girls before the class. You know, see where their headspace is at in terms of why they train and how they train, that kind of stuff. You know, trust me, if they are instructors, if they're teaching this their product, then I guarantee you they're going to love to talk to you about it. And so just make sure that they're training the right way, because there's certainly a wrong way to train. Something else to look out for is their safety. I should probably put that in first. um, but make sure that their safety protocols are what they should be. That is incredibly important, especially whenever you are talking about a class full of new firearm people. You know, if you just got your carry permit, if you just purchased your pistol, and you go to a class, there might be other people there the same at the same level as you. So you want the safety protocols to be very strict. And so with the third one, I would say is making sure that your instructors are competent. Your instructors need to know the difference between Smith & Wesson, M&P 2.0 from a Glock 48 or a Glock 43X, and how to operate those and how to clear them and ballistics behind the bullets and over penetration and all this kind of stuff that it takes to be a knowledgeable and safe instructor. And you also need to make sure that legalities governing the use of force are talked about extensively in your class, because what a lot of people don't realize is that if you just draw your gun and you shoot someone, there are so many legality things that can just put you in jail for a long time. And you can even say the wrong thing to the 911 dispatch and boom, you're in jail for several years. So make sure that whenever you go to train that you're looking at all of that stuff. That to me, those are high priority items.
Oh, absolutely. I had Andrew Bronca on not too long ago, and he's one of the world's, foremost experts in self-defense law. And he was even talking about you could be 100% truthful and honest and in the right and still land your butt in jail. So, yeah, 100%. So you keep coming back to this whole safety thing. Can we talk about why safety is so important to you, Kyle?
Yeah, certainly. So, well, I'll try to make this short. The reason why safety is so important is because if you go into a class, or if you teach a class where safety standards are not at the highest level, or that they're not prioritized at the highest level, then you're going to hurt yourself, or someone else is going to end up getting hurt. So about 2 years ago, actually just over 2 years ago, I went to a seminar. Do you want me to say the name, or do you want to say the name?
That's all you. Go for it.
I went to a seminar in Dallas, Texas called Untitled, and guess what happened? I got cut. So there were no safety standards that were met there. The only safety brief that we had was the instructor said, "Hey, if you use my aluminum blade training, or my aluminum bladed training blade," I know that's redundant, I'm sorry. "If you use this, be careful. Don't go 100% because this went through someone's arm before. And I'm okay with you using your own training blades. Just make sure that you grab the right one." It's essentially what he said. Well, as it turns out, you can kind of probably guess where this story is going. The partner I went, keep in mind, I didn't know anybody there. I was there for work and noticed that there was this knife defense seminar going on. So I was like, I'm going to take this. This is going to be great. So I found someone who, again, I didn't know who this guy was. We were pummeling like we were supposed to, and he went for his knife. It was supposed to be 10-20% just to warm up. This was like not even 45 minutes into the seminar. Like, it was on a Saturday morning, happened at 10:30. He went for his knife and went really fast, 100%. And I got my arm stabbed. There's a good, probably, I don't know, the total scar is maybe 6 to 8 inches long.
Yeah.
On my arm. The initial one was like 4 to 5 inches long, I believe. But yeah, he gripped and ripped, and he tore my radial artery, 2 tendons, a few muscles, the nerve in there.
Yeah.
And so, I had my arm, got my hand, everything works fine. There's some nerve damage there, which is, I can deal with, no big deal. But I will say that, if you are going to a seminar, if you're going to a class where they're doing anything concerning weapons, then make sure that those safety protocols are good. Okay, so what we do is, whenever you come into the gym, you go ahead, like we have cubbies set up for people to put their stuff in. So we tell everyone, sterilize yourself, no watches, no necklaces, earrings, rings, knives, guns,
Yeah.
all that stuff stays in the cubbies. Then you come in, you're patted down by 2 people. Make sure that you don't have anything on you.
Yep.
The third one is, and this kind of varies from between different instructors, but in my class, you're not bringing any outside training aids in whatsoever. You're using my stuff, and that's it. And so if you go out and come back, you get another buddy check done, and all that kind of stuff. We got people on standby and primaries for rushing people to the hospital. We're using that truck. I mean, it's a whole thing. And so the forward, in my experience and in my opinion, have to be very, very high. And if you go to a seminar, if you go to a class as a student and you don't notice any sort of safety being talked about or anything like that, speak up, please. I've done that probably 2 or 3 different times since I've been stabbed, and I kind of feel like a jerk for doing it, but you know what? I don't really care. I don't want other people getting hurt. I don't want myself getting hurt again. So
Absolutely.
you have to make sure that your training is still at a high level, but it's also safe, and you can do both for sure.
Yeah. And especially when we're talking a training situation, right? We have the luxury of time. Utilize it so that we can continue to train safely, right? And that's kind of my philosophy as far as, hard training as well, is, you injure yourself in hard training, you're out, right? And so that slows down your progress. So, I don't care what you're training in, whether it's with firearms or whether it's a combat sport, right? You have to go at a pace where everybody can maintain safety. And when we start adding in the use of things like SIRT guns, where there are potential for real tools, I mean, it doesn't make any sense not to take that time.
Yeah, 100%. Right? I agree with that.
Yeah, you have the time, utilize it. So yes, let's talk a little bit more about some of the scenario-based training that you do. Yeah, you've talked a little bit about scenario-based training, and scenario-based training is so important. One thing that gets brought up a lot in scenario-based training is the Tooler drill, or the 21-foot rule.
Yes.
Can you kind of expand on the scenario training that you've done and what you kind of discovered based around that drill?
Yeah, certainly. So that 21-foot drill it's a good barometer of where your students are at. So I like to use it in what we call timeline defense. And if you have taken my classes, or if you've taken other Apex classes throughout the country, then you've probably run into this drill a few times. So timeline defense drill, it really breaks down immediate threats and how to deal with them, and what to look for, and how to position yourself, and going through stages of readiness with your firearm and all that kind of stuff. So the 21-foot rule, like I said, really, it's a very good barometer for people. I have a lot of people come into my class, and we'll start doing that drill, and they will let people get too close to them. They will draw their firearm and shoot when they're not allowed to, or not legally allowed to, or they'll draw their firearm way too late. So it's a reality check for a lot of people. And so scenario training, that to me is the very, very basics of it, is doing that timeline defense. Like I said earlier, if you're looking to get into scenario training, you can start at the binary level of shooting ones and zeros, or that kind of stuff. Then you can work your way up to turning around and looking at your instructor to see if he has a knife in his hand, or if he does, how is he holding that knife? Is it in an aggressive manner? All that kind of stuff. And then you can work your way up to so many other things, all the way up to, using sim guns and dealing with, casualties and all that kind of stuff.
Oh yeah.
Scenario-based training is an excellent reality check for everyone.
You bet.
I absolutely love going through it, but it scares the hell out of me too.
It's an ego killer left and right. You will
Yeah.
die so many times if the scenario training is done correctly. For those of you who might not know what I'm talking about with the 21-foot rule at home, right? What we're talking about is this has been tested and proven time and time again that somebody at 21 feet, put that in your mindset right now, can run towards you before you can draw and fire on them and get them to stop moving and no longer become a threat. And that's for a number of different reasons, and we can get more in depth. But really, 21 feet, as Kyle mentioned earlier, most defensive guns usages happen in under 6 feet. So when we say 21 feet, it's not realistic. It might have some more applications when you're law enforcement, when you're talking about a citizen defender. I mean, 21 feet isn't even the length of your hallway. I can almost get, well, for most of us, right? It's
Right. Yeah, that's
so,
very true.
yeah, when we do this style of drill, it really is a good way, giving you additional room really to kind of test your skill set and your ability to recognize, the lethality of the attacker coming at you and kind of what your, reactions are to it. And then as we close that distance, I for one, when I went through my training with integrative defense strategies, it was my snare. I was terrified, first of all, right? But Todd did a great job. He can really kind of pick up on your energy and where you're at. And for those of you at home who don't know, I have a very long ponytail. It's always relatively long. He came up behind me and grabbed me by that thing and shoved me forward toward the shoot house, right? And I'd had experiences before. Todd kind of knows about my background. I've been grabbed, slammed. I've had people try and stab me, shoot me, wrestle me, like all sorts of different stuff. I have never once in my lifetime had somebody grab me by the hair before like that, but I had always anticipated somebody would, and it was awesome and scary and terrifying. And luckily for me, I was able to draw and recognize the level of danger and be able to go through the scenario.
Yeah.
And it was so funny. I've had these adrenalized experiences before, and at the very end, he's like, well, how'd you do it? I immediately, just being me, because I'm a perfectionist, and Todd will be rolling his eyes laughing at me right now when he hears this. I was like, I don't know, there's things I could have done better. And he was like, chill out, Sheena. Right? But your mindset goes to a million different places as soon as it happens, and it's so telling. It really cuts through everything, right? You can't have an ego. You're literally facing the way you react under stress, things that you don't get to train because it's a natural body response that you can't fake. Right? The only way that you can really go through and know how you're going to react is if you do scenario-based training. And the more scenario-based training that you do, the smoother those become. So you've done a ton of scenario-based training. As a matter of fact, you've even put together small and larger scale training scenarios.
Yes, I have. Yeah, I sure have.
Can you talk a little bit more about putting those together and what that experience was like for you?
Oh, man. Well, I got to tell you, me personally, I honestly think that me going through the training is easier than actually putting it together and leading it. Man, I'm not kidding. There's so much that goes into it. Obviously you have to worry about safety is a big one, especially if you're dealing with sim guns, right? Because if you don't know what a sim gun is, just go check it out. Those things are awesome, excellent training tools, but there's a level of danger that just presents itself. And so you're dealing with that, and you're also dealing with many moving parts. You're trying to get that, either the complex scenario or the large scale scenario. You're trying to get those protagonists to go through and get some excellent quality, professional training out of it. And all at the same time, you're dealing with this, and you're dealing with, you got other people taking care of other things for you, and you've got role players, and you've got just so many things going on. And so you have to really take it step by step to make sure that you don't miss anything. And obviously practicing helps. So whenever I went to my level 3 for IDS back, what was it, January, February this year, this Corona thing is really messing me up as far as time goes. So I went to my level 3, and I had done a lot of scenario training before, and even before then, in my classes we started doing more scenario training so that way I could get ready for it for my level 3. And so whenever I was a protagonist, I went through, and I felt like I rocked it. I was actually really surprised, very happy with it. Um, but however, whenever I started to do, like when I started to lead those scenarios, I had to create it from the ground up in less than probably 12 hours or so.
Yeah.
And so Friday night and Saturday night, I was awake to 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, just like going over all the fine details of this, trying to make it exactly correct. Keep in mind, if you're going to be doing scenario training, take the time to do it and do it right. What I did were in both those scenarios were awesome storylines. Would have been great for Hollywood. Not really that great for for an actual real life scenario training. So I actually learned a lot from those, and we will be doing some scenario based training here in Fort Wayne very soon. I'm very, very excited for it. It's a great reality check. Like I said before, it's a great reality check to see where you're really at. And what my goal is to invite people who are not students to come and take that seminar. That way they can check where they're at, because there are a lot of people out there who are suffering from the Dunning-Kruger effect.
Ooh,
and
yeah.
And that scenario based training is an excellent way for you to figure out exactly where your skills are at.
Yes, and for those of you at home who do not know what the Dunning-Kruger effect is, basically can be broken down into two segments, right? The first one is you know a little bit, so you think you know a lot, right? The other part of that is because it's easy for you, it should be easy for everybody else. So I guarantee you've all had that at some point in time in your life, or you know somebody who kind of just permanently lives in there. So make sure when you're doing your training, you're not falling under one of those categories, because it is important. You brought up kind of some of your scenarios. You had two great role players. You had Kyle McCabe, who's amazing. Yep. Fantastic guy. Adore him. I went through level 1 with him. And of course, Casey Smith, who's also fantastic, right? So good folks to go through as your role players. Speaking of role players, I hear a little rumor that you have an excellent drunk character that you like to play in role playing. Can you tell us a little bit more about whether that was something that you just created or if that's based off some experience?
Oh, that's a great question. So I feel like I do a really good drunk character. I take it to a playful drunk character to a violent drunk character in
doesn't take much.
Drop of a hat. Yeah, a drop of a hat. So that is it's I've obviously been drunk before, and so I take a little bit from that. Whenever I get drunk, I'm playful, I'm happy, and I like having fun. I've never been in a fight when I was drunk, that kind of stuff. So I don't know from that personal experience. However, being in the military, we tend to drink quite a bit, and so like I said, I've always been one where I'm pretty responsible when it comes to drinking. I make sure that there's a plan in place and that kind of stuff, and that we can all go home and not get in trouble. So other people do not think that way, and especially whenever I was I was a sergeant in the Army, which means I'm responsible for people below me, subordinates, and so I've had to deal with my share of drunk soldiers before, and that's really where the inspiration came from, and you're just kind of pulling from those guys and seeing how they acted and seeing how quickly it can turn bad.
Yeah, and that's been my experience is the best role players really are diving into some sort of experience that they've had. So I have a great assistant instructor who he's been an emergency trauma room nurse. He's actually run emergency rooms we're coming up on like 24, 25 years. So he will pull these scenarios out of his back pocket that he has dealt with that are just phenomenal. He's one of the best role players I've ever seen. One of these days, I'm going to get him in front of some of you guys, because I think you guys would just love him, because he's fantastic. But that's been my experience, is the more experiences that you've had, the easier it is to become a role player. So, it's definitely an important role. It's not an easy role to come up with these scenarios and to run them, or even being a role player. But, if you can get the right team together, the experience is invaluable.
Yeah, no, that's very true.
Let me ask you another question. You've talked a little bit before, specifically on the Wasted Ammo podcast, episode 202. You talked a little bit about kind of your experience coming from one of those guys who, I have a gun and I've got, some military background, so I'm fine and I can do everything, to going, oh crap, right? Dunning-Kruger, haha, right? Now I recognize where I'm at. there's a lot of guys out there, not just guys, but gals as well, and you know that as well as I do.
Yeah.
In your words, is there a way that you could tap into somebody like that and help them to move along in their journey to see that they need more training? I mean, what would you say to somebody that you encountered who had that similar mindset that you did many years ago?
Yeah. So it's a great question.
It's a hard one.
It is. Yes and no. Just I'm trying to find the right way to put it. So, from my personal experience, several years ago, I was carrying my gun and I felt like I was good. I had military training. That was the best training in the world, and I got it. I'm good to go. Well, one day at work, my wife texted me and she's like, "Hey, do you want to go to the gym tonight and work out?" And I just had a bad day at work. I'm like, I just want to go home and just veg out on the couch. That's all I want to do. And so, probably about 30 minutes later, I get my one of my buddies sends me an Instagram video from some account, and it was of a father being attacked with he had 2 kids with him, and this attacker had a knife and just was going to town on him, and the father was just gross motor, just trying to do something. If he had training, he definitely didn't use it, which, it's a stressful time. I understand that.
Yeah.
But there was no really real techniques that were being applied. It looked like someone just fighting for his life, and he ended up dying actually. And so at that moment, I was like, I don't know what I would do in that situation, And so that right there really opened my eyes. I'm like, okay, something has to change. Like I need more, because I don't know any of this stuff at all. And so whenever I have this conversation with potential students, random people, whoever it is, I ask them, how prepared do you think you actually are right now? How prepared do you think your family is? So I had this conversation, I don't know, a month and a half ago with someone, and he was like, it was with a woman, and she came into my class and she was just curious about us. So we talked, and she's like, and I asked her if she carried a gun, and she's like, no, my husband is a police officer, so he's the one protecting me. I'm like, where is he at right now?
Yep.
Well, he's at work. Okay. Well, if someone were to come in that front door right now, what would happen? What would you do? And so with people, you have to understand that even though that you love your significant other, they're not always there to save you.
Mm-hmm.
The police, not always there to save you. You are responsible for your own personal protection, no matter what. Absolutely. Even if you're with someone, like with me and my wife, I tell her all the time, hey, listen, I love you, but if something ever happens, then I need you to fight as well. I can't take care of everyone.
Yeah.
I will certainly try. You're damn right. I will certainly try. But, you are responsible for your own personal protection. And that's the way that there's a lot of people living who have blinders on, and they don't want to see that. They want to see the happy tunnel at the end of, or the happy light at the end of the tunnel. And, it's sad. But I understand it because I was there.
Yeah.
The self-defense is a human right, and it's something that everybody should know, but it's something that people, they shy away from it a lot just because they either think they don't need it or it makes them uncomfortable or whatever reason. But it's kind of my goal is to turn the local area around here into a massive army of citizen defenders. That's really the best way that I can explain it.
Yeah. I had the opportunity to hang out with Sal Mascoli in January for SHOT Show. And we were just hanging out with some other instructors having a conversation. And he was talking to a couple folks. And I love the way he put it. He was like, well, who's a first responder? And of course, everybody's saying, oh, law enforcement, blah, blah, blah. And he's like, no. Law enforcement is generally the 3rd, 4th, 5th responder. You're the first responder. You alone, by yourself, you're the very first person there. And you have to take that role seriously. And I really, really loved how he worded that, because he's right. right? I mean, it might be your neighbor who's the second responder. It might be, you know, EMS who's third, and then maybe fire, then maybe law enforcement, right? So we tend to get in this mindset that, okay, I need law enforcement, they're here right now, but that's just not the case. And so, yeah, I really like that mindset that you're talking about.
Yeah.
Let me ask you another question. I got to play it around on your Instagram.
Okay.
And I noticed that you like to enjoy some time on your motorcycle.
Yeah, I really do. It's very fun.
I can't blame you.
Yeah.
Can you tell us about your bike and maybe some of your most memorable or favorite rides?
Yeah, certainly. So I'll have to admit, first off, I don't have it anymore because I sold it to buy my dad a 69 Camaro.
Oh, how
So,
awesome is that?
yeah. And so if
Okay,
you're,
I,
yes.
I want to hear that story. You can't end it. You can't. Oh, and anyways, I did this really amazing thing. Anyways, next topic. No, I got to hear. How'd your dad react?
Yeah. Well, he reacted. He was very, very grateful for it. Obviously, I had this whole thing planned out to where I was going to be. So my dad lives in Texas, and I had the car shipped down to my friend's house, and I had it detailed and all this stuff. It was beautiful. And what I was going to do is for Thanksgiving last year. I was going to drive it to Dallas and have some professional pictures taken of it. I was going to put that into a calendar for my dad and just give that to him as all one big present, right? On my way there, the car decided to just fail on me.
Oh.
And so from there, what we did is the only person I could call was my dad, you know. So he found his car on the side of the road, unfortunately. But from there, like it was, we got it fixed, and he drives it now, and he loves it. Every single time I talk to him, like, hey, how's the car doing? He's like, it's fast.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Oh, what a great story.
Yeah.
That's fantastic.
It did not turn out exactly how I wanted it to, but he still has it and he still loves it. So
yeah, but the enjoyment was just the same, right?
Yeah, no, that's true.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I'm sorry you don't have your bike anymore, but man, what a story.
Yeah. So I used to have a Suzuki Boulevard 800. It was a good starter bike. I mean, I used to, ride dirt bikes all the time when I was younger, and I got this bike probably about, I don't know, 4 or 5 years ago, and so my dad and one of my friends, my dad, drove up here with his bike, and one of my other friends, all three of us went on a drive up on the western side of Michigan, all on the shores, essentially, all the way up until the Upper Peninsula, and then all the way back down. It was excellent. I think 4 or 5 day ride that was just beautiful. Oh, I would recommend it to anybody. It was great.
That sounds amazing.
Yeah, it was awesome. It was really good.
Fantastic. So let me ask you a question, right? Like me, you're a huge proponent of getting trauma care training, right? Especially if you carry a firearm. You've even had a brother-in-law who had to actually use trauma care training for a young kid at a school who ended up, I think he jumped off some equipment on the school playground and cut an artery. Yeah. As somebody who obviously does the same, I'm a huge proponent. Can you talk a little bit more about your philosophy on that and why that's so important?
Well, I mean, I'll just point back to my injury. If there was a person there who did not have a tourniquet, I would be dead probably. Because I don't think anybody else there had any sort of medical training at all. So in my opinion, I think everybody should carry something, a tourniquet at the very least. They cost $30. If you get a really good one, and I carried 3 or 4 tourniquets on me at all times. I have an ankle holster, and I've also got a inside the waistband pouch that I got from Immediate Casualty Care. And those, I mean, I carry 3 or 4 different types on me. I carry a cat, I carry a SWAT T, and I also carry, oh God, what's the name of that one? It's going to irritate me until I figure it out. And RMT, a ratcheting medical tourniquet. So I carry different types, just they have different uses. So
yeah,
I think if you carry a firearm, it would legally, I think it's really going to help you if you shoot someone in defense of your life or the lives or the lives of others, I think it's going to help you legally if you try to administer first aid. I really do. Now, if you carry something, if you carry any sort of medical equipment, then you should train with it. Same as your firearm. You need to learn how to apply these things under pressure. And they're easy. That's the thing. I mean, I got my ankle holster right next to me, and I can take my cat tourniquet out right now and just apply it very, very quickly because I've done it over and over and over again. So, if you have any questions at all about what to carry, how to use it, all that stuff, please reach out to a lot of people. There's a lot of people who carry this stuff. Please reach out to me. I'll be glad to teach you.
Same. Yeah. Awesome. Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. We have a local company here about 45 minutes from me called RevMed X. And some of our local ambulance companies around the area carry some of their products. And one of the things they have is a ratcheting tourniquet. But unlike not all, but a lot of other tourniquets, once you use it, you're done. Like it's done. Where This one is meant to be able to be trained with and practiced with and kept moving. Like you can train with it, fold it back up and stick it in your bag and be able to use it again in real time. So that's one of the ones that I really like. But there are so many out there. There are just so many out there. And it's just so easy to get training.
Yeah, it sure is. And there's online events happening all the time.
Whether you carry a firearm, a loved one carries, it doesn't even matter if you carry. Like I was explaining earlier, you had a family member with an incident for a young kid who simply fell off of playground equipment, right? And hurt himself and was able to apply that tourniquet right away and be able to, help this kid, potentially maybe even, keep a limb. So
yeah, that's very true. And there used to be, it's not so prevalent anymore, but there used to be, the mindset in terms of using a tourniquet that if you apply a tourniquet, you can automatically lose your limb. That's not true. I still have my arm and the tourniquet was applied high and tight on this arm, so there are factors that come into that of losing a limb after a tourniquet is applied, but there are doctors now doing microsurgery after a tourniquet has been applied for like 48 hours or something crazy like that. So, more than likely, you'll be up to 4 hours at the most of having a tourniquet on before you're at an emergency room. That's just the world that we live in right now, So carry first aid equipment, train with it.
Educate.
Yeah, absolutely. It's very, very important.
So you probably get this question a lot, and that's okay. I want to just discuss it. Let's talk about different ways to conceal carry, kind of the positions that we carry in and the holsters and the body placement. What are your thoughts on that? I'm sure you get asked that a ton of different reasons. There's obviously pros and cons. Can you talk a little bit more?
Yeah, absolutely I can. So the way that I carry my firearm is I carry it at the 3 o'clock and outside the waistband holster, right? That's me. There's a lot of people who don't like carrying it on outside the waistband holster at all. So, which is fine. I used to carry inside the waistband. That's not really, what I like to do, but, to each his own. There's also people who carry in the appendix position. That's great for what I carry. I carry a compact firearm. Now, it's not a single stack, which is, I guess, kind of like a micro compact, I guess is technically the term for it. But for me, carrying my firearm, the appendix is very uncomfortable and I just won't do it. Also, you have to think about retention too. For appendix, I find that retention on the appendix carry is a lot harder than it is on the 3 o'clock, because I'm right-handed.
Yep.
So in terms of that, that's kind of why I choose. Plus, it's just, for me, it's comfortable to have it right there. Now, with the other, there's a lot of people who carry, at the 4 to 6 o'clock on their back, essentially. And I've actually turned people away from carrying at that position to carrying 3 o'clock or appendix. Weapon retention back there is relatively nothing. And if you get on your back in a self-defense environment, you have no access to your firearm whatsoever. So it does not make sense to carry it there. There are off-the-body carries as well. I don't carry a bag or a purse, so to me it doesn't apply. But I'm a huge advocate for people actually carrying a firearm. So if that's how you need to carry, great. I love it. Please do that. But also think about, if you're carrying it wherever, you need to train as you're carrying it that way, you know. Um, the other one also is belly band, or you can wear a shirt and you got it tucked into your armpit, or your bra if you're a lady. Um, I've trained with a belly band before, and it's not bad. I will say you should probably get one that is high quality. I've my wife bought one several years ago for her carry pistol, and it's all it is just a piece of fabric with a slot in there for the gun, and a fabric loop that goes over it.
Yep.
While that's good for people who are trying to carry, for in-fight weapon retention, in-fight weapon access, it's not really that great. So Crossbreed Holsters partnered with Rod Pinka several years ago, and they actually have a Crossbreed belly band modular system. And I've trained with that before, and it's good. I'm not saying it's great, but it's good. It's to me, that's, if I were to have a belly band, that's what I would carry, just because it makes sense. And so those are if you want to wear like an old school like shoulder rig, that'd be cool. I haven't trained with that in ever. So, that cross draw of going up underneath your left armpit to me would be a little bit weird, but yeah, those are really the primary ways to carry. I've had some students I've talked to some people who carry on their ankle as their primary way of carrying. And, for me, if you carry a gun, if that's where you want to carry, fine. Just know that the limitations of it are, if you're trying to access that weapon in fight, it's going to be very, very hard for you to do it. If you want to go to the ground first, then sure, just know that you might not always get that chance to do it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And, I think the more we think about these positions of carry and train realistically based on data and numbers as to what that looks like, I think that should really open up some windows of the way that we do carry. I always like to tell the story about a gal I had come in who didn't need any kind of self-defense training. She didn't need any kind of firearms training. You see, she carried 2 guns at all time, one in her purse that was 4 feet away from her and one around her ankle. I was standing right next to her, and I just put my hand on her shoulder, and I was like, so if I punch you in the face right now? And she was like,
Right.
What?
Yep.
Lady, if I punch you in the face right now, what are you going to do? You're sitting in a chair. I'm standing here with my hand on your shoulder. You can't get to your purse, which, by the way, had a zipper.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yeah.
So there's no way she's accessing that thing, right? Especially in fight. And she's seated in a chair. You're not getting to your ankle holster. And she's wearing these gigantic boots. Like, I can tell they're cowboy boots. Like, I'm like, how? No, lady, that's not happening, right? And it just cracks me up. And so she just kind of looked at me. I obviously hurt her ego, and I never saw her again, which was unfortunate. But, at least hopefully she got some understanding that is just not the best way to go. And I always like to remind our ladies, right? If you're going to carry in a purse, and I've seen this several times, I'll get gals with blue guns and whatever, and we'll start kind of working on just the basic draw. I can't tell you how many times I've seen ladies draw from their purse. Ladies, you can shoot through the dang thing.
That's very true.
You can shoot through the dang thing. You never even have to present. You want my wallet and keys? Here you go. Boom.
Yeah, there's lots of videos out there of people of an attacker pointing a gun at a good guy, and the good guy will put his hand up in front of the barrel, and the attacker will move the gun off to the side. It happens all the time. I mean, it's just the way some people are wired. They don't think about those kind of things, that you can shoot through objects like a hand or like a concealed carry purse.
Yes.
Yeah, that's. It's just funny how that works. So I will say in closing on this question, carrying off body, if that's how they want to carry it, I'm all for it. I love it. Now, I would not personally, as trying to be moral and ethical on this, I would not advise them carrying off body, because you have almost no retention of that weapon, especially if someone comes up and takes it. But if that's the only way that you can carry, then please carry. Just know that there are disadvantages to it, just like there are disadvantages to every other carry position.
Yeah. Doesn't matter which position you pick, train it.
That's absolutely correct. Yep.
So real quick, let's talk a little bit before you've got to get going, a little bit about your free Facebook group called Citizen Defender Online.
Yeah, certainly. So I created this Facebook group about maybe 2 months ago, Citizen Defender Online. It's on Facebook. And the intent for that is to spread positive, and it's a hard term to kind of to say, positive information, correct information, and to create that community, to create that mindset, and to spread the right way to train, to tell people that, like we said earlier, going out to the range and being at full presentation is not the only way that you should fire your firearm.
Yeah.
You know, you should take your firearm and shoot with it right in that deep retention position, and know what that feels like when you pull that trigger, because I guarantee you the first time you do, your face is going to be like, oh, that's way different, you know? So that's the whole point of it, is to create that awareness in that group of breeding and growing these citizen defenders. It's very important that people realize that all people who carry guns are not gun nuts. They're not crazy. They're not paranoid. That's not the case at all. You know, being a citizen defender is not just some catchy name for a class. It's a way of life. It's a way to think about things. It's a way of being prepared. And so that's kind of one of my reasons for creating that Facebook group.
Yes, awesome. And it leads into so much more, like personalized coaching and all sorts of good stuff. But I love how intellectually intelligent that entire group is about bringing mindsets and videos and you know, different situations in front of people to go, hey, I saw this, here's my 2 cents, what does everybody else think about it? And it's a really great group. If you haven't joined into it, please go find it. It's a free Facebook group called Citizen Defender Online. Just do a quick Facebook search for it. You know, Kyle, as soon as you grabbed your cert gun, I had to start giggling, because boy, aren't you and I cut from the same exact cloth. Yeah, not far from it, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, it's always right here next to my desk.
Awesome. Well, I know this has been fantastic having you on. For those people who want to find out more about you, how to train with you, and all the wonderful things that you're doing, where can people find more information?
Yeah, certainly. So you can find me on Instagram at Kyle Rogers Instructor, and the same thing on Facebook as well. And also you can go to Citizen Defender Online on Facebook, and like Sheena said, it's a free Facebook group that anybody can be a part of. And it's a great conversation that we're having in there. If you have any questions about specifics concerning firearms or combatives, please feel free to reach out to me. I'm usually very quick on responding to messages. So, or if you just have any questions about me and you want to know more about exactly what happened to my dad's car, then I guess we can talk about that.
And really, if you're one of the 1.5 million brand new gun owners over the last 2 months, please seek out somebody like myself, seek out somebody like Kyle with extensive training and knowledge so that we can help you, because now is a time where people are concerned, they're scared, and they really need training, and it's hard to do within our home. So please make sure you find a reputable instructor. We're here for your goodness, right? We want to help you. We want to take care of you. We want to show you the proper ways, and we're always willing to help new gun owners, right?
That's absolutely correct. You could not have said it better, for sure. So, hey, Sheena, thank you so much for having me on. It was a great conversation. You're a great interviewer, by the way.
Oh, thank you.
Awesome questions.
That means a whole lot. For you guys at home, stay with us. We'll be back here next week with a new interview and somebody brand new. Also, for those of you who stick around for a little while longer, Kyle has given me a fun story to share, which I'll be releasing later. So little tag for that. So stay tuned, and everybody else, we'll see you next week. Again, thank you, Kyle.
Yep, thank you.